On video today, it's come to the time of year I've got to service this tractor. It is a long job. It can take 1 day, 2 days, it all depends what it's been used for. This one has been digging, it's been hosed down and whatnot since, and then it got stored, it's been used with my trailer and whatnot. I'm not going to show all the service because to me there's no point, because some stuff's normal that you do. I do strip exhaust down, air filter and whatnot. One of the most important things is to make sure that it's off its wheels, so it's stood in free air. Reason is because when if you take the wheels off, behind them there's a set of bearings that want looking at, making sure that there's grease in them, etc. Checking oil, that sort of thing. This oil only gets changed once a year, so it'll only get changed in winter, and I think I've got a video on the showing changing oil, so they don't do much of a point. But the tractor needs completely stripping down. Everything that's yellow is coming off. As I say, exhaust, fuel tank, lights, air filters, gearbox, all cables and stuff like that. Two of the most important things, believe it or not, might sound a bit stupid, but is such as this. This pin here, it has got quite a bit of grease in actually, but I take out, re-grease the cable that belongs to it, I take away and put oil down it, because they do go rusty after time. I mean, they're getting water on them and whatnot, and they start going rusty inside. And again, on this lever here, it wants stripping, oil putting down. But I will give you one bit of advice about this. This I take out and I put grease inside because it's plastic, for one thing. But there is something you have to watch out for with this. The thing you've got to watch with them is that the end of this, sometimes they get frayed. And if you take this out of the outer sheathing to put oil down it, sometimes if this is frayed at end, you can't get this back in. Sometimes when you take the screw out of there, because it's tightened down on it, it stretches it, and therefore you can't get it out of there. So what I tend to do, if it's like that, which this one is, I won't risk taking this out. What I'll do is I'll put some oil just down the tube itself until it runs out at the other end. First part of my servicing, whenever I service anything, first thing I do is take fuel out. It is quite important, because if you're messing about and you take one of the fuel pipes off, around carburetor, it's just going to run out all over the place, and then you never know, you might drop a match or a cigarette on it, and that's the end of that one. Another little thing that I just want to mention before I do anything is that what I tend to do is, as I take things off, I clean them, rather than getting everything off it, then cleaning it as I'm putting it back together. I tend to do it as I'm taking it apart. So if anybody needs to know how to get the fuel out, it's very, very easy. It's just a pipe in top of petrol tank onto a bottle. And the pipe I use is very thin. This is the pipe that I use. It's ever such thin pipe, but I find because it's thin, as I come to the end of getting stuff out, the fuel out, I can run this round the tank and it'll suck it out, whereas a big piece will only suck what it can get down the hole, whereas this has got a thinner end to it, and it seems, I know it might take a little bit longer, but it just does a little better job. So I'm going to start off with my service. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take wheels off. That's the first thing that's got to be done. Just so I can check wheels, I can check bearings behind them. Obviously on this video you're not going to see me do everything, because it'll make it a very, very long video. So I'll make a start. The bearings I'm talking about that want checking are these. It's just a cover that comes off and reveals behind it. If they're dry, put some grease on. If they're not, you know, there's no point behind it. Same with the other side, because when you're cleaning tractor, when it's been used on garden or whatever, you're spraying all this with water to get mud off, so you have to keep checking that. There's one little thing that I do If I take nuts and bolts off of anything, I try and keep the nuts and bolts with that part. Or what I will do is I have a set of jars like this, just little jars, and I'll put the nuts and bolts in them jars at the side of the part, so that I don't get nuts and bolts and stuff mixed up, because when you're stripping it down there is a lot. Question that did come up that somebody asked me is, what do I clean these yellow parts with? So these yellow bits I clean them with WD-40. It's the only parts I clean with WD-40. Oh, sorry, and the petrol tank. The rest of it I don't. I just wipe down. Sometimes I do use a bit of furniture polish if it's really wants quite a lot of doing. And I made this stand so that when they clean they can just be putting that stand and they're out of the way then. I'm just doing petrol tank. Just want to show you inside this filter if you can see. I don't know if you can see, and I don't know if I can focus it in, but inside there is full of rubbish which has come out when I've been filling it up and that, so all that's got to come out. Small little tip for you. This part here that I've taken off, that belongs to the carburettor, down this hole here, which is the air intake, does get oiled up. It really does get oiled up, so best thing to do is make sure you get all that out of there, otherwise it's going to end up going into actual carburettor itself. Just seen me take the exhaust off, I've put a piece of rag into the exhaust hole, and that will stop anything going into it, and I shall do the same in a second to where carburettor came off. Stopping what I'm doing at the moment, just to tell you a little bit of something. On here there's two springs, and they connect to carburettor. It's a very good idea if you don't disconnect them, if you can leave them intact while you're taking all the section off. It's just a little bit of a tip, because unless you mark them, and one of them is a very, very thin spring, so unless you mark them and you're very, very careful, they're allowed to go back in the wrong place, and if they come off at the other end and all, then you end up being in a fix. But if you don't need to take them off, best thing to do is take a photograph out where they are. That'll be the easiest option of doing it. Back to it. I more or less took off everything that I can take off, but what I do want to show you before I start cleaning it, because there's no point in me showing you cleaning it all, it's fairly obviously what you've got to do, it's just showing you how to strip it down. So I just want to show you inside of this, because I know that some people are a bit scared of this sort of thing, but I want to show you what's in it and what to do with it. The other side, the clutch lever, is just a pin. This isn't. So let's get a screwdriver and open it up, and I'll just show you what you're dealing with, if you understand what I mean. So if we just lift this out, turn it over, you can see that inside here is just a base. Inside here, I don't know if you can see that, is this with the cable that comes in from this end, just wraps around there. And all that I do, if we can just get that screw out of it, just to make my life very simple, just drop that down. All I do, as I say, is just a bit of grease in here, because this is all moving part. So we put some grease in here, it's just to keep it, you don't want it all over the place, it's just to make sure that it's movable, that's all. And you'll find that after time, what will happen is that they'll tighten up. They'll tighten up, and if you put that bit of grease in, you'll find that they're a lot better to use. This just drops back on top. Screw goes back in. This time I'm not taking cable off of each side, because actually you don't need it, because I service this 3 times of the year. Feel it, make sure it works, so there's no point in me doing cable until it's my winter service. So what I'm going to do now is lift my box off, which is here. This is all my tools in. If you've seen my other videos, you'll know what's inside here. Take my box off. It's just put on me a couple of pipe clips just to hold it in place. So that comes off. So you end up with a tractor that looks something like this. And all I'm going to do now is wipe all these parts down. If there's any muck or rope that's in here, I will clean it out with a paintbrush and a bit of petrol. Being careful not to get any petrol on belts, and no petrol on here. I shall check my spark plug, take it out, check it, make sure that that's alright. The alarm system for it I'm not checking. Lights I'm not checking, because there's no need, I know that they work. So it's just now a case of actually cleaning everything down that's on it. I don't normally take anything else off. Sometimes this comes off, sometimes belts come off, but because it were only serviced January, what is it now, June, and it didn't do many gardens this year, so I don't really need to do that. It's just your own common sense now. Just to point out that if you look at my other videos, you'll see that this is your oil, we put your oil into engine. That screw there is where you take it out, and this is where you put the oil in for the gearbox, just here, and underneath, right underneath the silver screw, and that's where you take it out of gearbox. They do say that you've only ever got to put oil in it once, but to be truthful, I think after a couple of years I'll change that oil, because I think it will need changing. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to clean everything, and then it will just be a case of sitting and putting everything back together. But servicing as such would be an oil change, which is on, as I say, is on another video. I think I said earlier it's on another video. Oil change, new spark plug, and generally cleaning everything down, so it brings it back up to, I wouldn't say factory niceness, because you'll never get that again, but not far off, and everything will be cleaned down and sorted out. It's also your chance to check to see if there's any oil leaks anywhere, check the belts aren't worn down, and general things like such as springs haven't stretched, making sure that all these little nuts and bolts and everything are tight, because they do come undone sometimes, and just generally going all over the tractor, making sure that everything's tight, all the nuts and bolts are tight. Sometimes I'll loosen them off and put some grease on nut and bolt, and then put it back on again. So I'll get on with that. I'm not going to bore you to death, so I'll get on with that. I said the only other thing that I would normally do is put oil down cables, but this time I don't need to, because I know that they're fine. Just as a point is that this here is also a moving part, and it is a good idea just to whip this off. I did mention in one of my other videos that this is also a throttle, if you want to call it, holder. I don't know what to actually call it, but I did mention it in another video. I will actually mention it in this video in a moment. But the plastic washer and whatnot, and this, but you see it just slides out like so, and underneath that you can just put a bit of grease, because this part here is actually moving all the time. So you can put a bit of grease underneath that, drop that back on, and a bit round the edges here. I know that you might think that it collects muck, but actually it's a lot better having a bit on it with moving about a lot. This fits back in, it's not an hard job. And nut goes back on. And I was just saying that it's a stopper in case your throttle cable breaks. That's taking some thinking about, which I put in another video. It should be loose like that, but if your throttle cable should snap and you need to get home or something, or you're doing a job, you can pull that and tighten this up and it will stay there for you, so you can carry on doing what you're doing. But as normal, it's a moving part. It's just, that's all. So it just moves about. That's all. So that's some talks to put a little bit of grease on too. Okay, everything is cleaned, and it's time to put it all back together. So what I want to do is put it back together, speed it all up, and if you need to know where anything goes, you can always pause it, stop it, slow it down, whatever you want to do. There's fuel in it. Now I need to see whether things work. Start with the lights. Yes, lights fine. See if it will run. Fuel. Working fine. That's the quickest I've ever put a tractor together.